Hi everyone, Aiden here with etrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at the line of Titan Chains Square Link tractor tire chains. Now the big thing to know here is the tractor we have these installed on today has a tire size of 14.9-24, so always check the measurements and don't just take the word for it on the side of the tire. Measure it out too. We've got a good video showing how to do that, just to make sure you get the right chain for you, because one, these chains will fit a range of tire sizes, but if your tire doesn't fall within that range, we do have other sizes available here at etrailer. Now, this style of chain is going to be square link, and really all that means is it's the shape of each individual link. They're going to have these hard edges and be generally more square. What that translates to is a more aggressive chain. Those hard edges and the higher profile that these end up sitting on is going to do really well against ice, as opposed to something like a twist link, which will be a little bit more mild and not as good on ice. The important thing to know though is whether you go with this or the twist link style from Titan Chain, they're both going to be approved for on and off-road use. So if you do find yourself driving on pavement or asphalt in addition to off-road, and you want to make sure the chains don't get damaged in those scenarios or damage what you're driving on, then this is a good way to go. The other thing to note is that these are some thick chains, 10 millimeters thick, and again, very high profile. So if you're looking for something to give you really good traction on ice, deep snow, muddy conditions, these will definitely get the job done. And they're going to have a great construction. It's a manganese nickel alloy steel, which means it's going to be a lot more corrosion resistant, and you don't have to worry about it as much, meaning it'll last longer for more seasons. This is also a ladder pattern style chain, which just means that these cross sections of chain form this sort of ladder shape. And what that's going to translate to is better traction on starts and stops. For your tractors, you're going to have that ladder pattern, but also your H pattern. That H pattern is going to be a little bit different. It's only approved for off-road use, so keep that in mind. But it's designed to keep a cluster of chains on the center of the tire raised up. So if you find yourself driving on some sideways hills, it's going to give you better traction in those scenarios. So depending on your land and what kind of conditions you're driving in, that might be the better fit for you and your tractor. These chains don't have any cams or tensioning mechanisms on them, so you'll notice we are using a rubber tensioner. That doesn't come included with the chains, but I would strongly advise using them because you're probably not going to get a perfect fit out of these just out of the box, especially because there isn't any tensioning mechanism on it. And the last thing you want is for the chains to be loose on the tire. That could spell damage for you or your tractor, and the chains just aren't going to work properly. Having them tight against the tread of the tire will make sure they do their job. Now these do come in a pair, so you get one for each side, and you're probably wondering now, how do they install? It's actually pretty straightforward. We'll walk you through the process right now. Now, starting off your installation, you want to lay the chains out, and because it's such a large pair of chains, make sure nothing's tangled. If anything's tangled, it's just going to make your job a lot harder when you go to put it on the tire, so laying it out now is going to help you out. Plus, we want to check for proper orientation. We want the end links here that have a more hooked side to be facing away from the tire. The smoother side will be touching the tire. And then on the very end, one side will just be a basic hook. The other side over here will be more of a lever. We want that lever on the outside face of the tire where we can reach it. Now there's two different methods that you could go about this. If it's just you, then I would lay it out in front of or behind your tire and make sure it's really well spread out, really well centered on the tire, and drive onto it and pull the chains over the top. Now, because this is a very heavy chain, that's not going to be the easiest to do on your own. And if you don't get it perfectly centered, you're going to have some major fitment issues where underneath the tire you maybe have a bunch of chain that's bunched up together and ends up being pretty loose. So the way I would go about it, and the way we've had the most luck today, is by draping it over top of the tire, having an extra set of hands with you, so someone's operating the tractor and slowly backing it up, and you're here on the outside feeding the chain over, just being careful of the moving vehicle obviously, but making sure that everything feeds onto the tire in a very straight and centered way. That's going to, one, ensure better fitment, and it's going to be less lifting on your part. So it's going to be a lot easier that way. Speaking of, let's walk through that now. So I'm just going to start off getting this draped over. And what I mean by having it centered is really this side to side. As you're driving over it, if you're doing this yourself, you might end up where it's pulled to the inside edge and there's not enough on the outside edge to make your connections. So right now is the time where we can be really particular about how it's sitting side to side over the tire here. And once you've got it started most of the way like this, you can have your extra set of hands start operating the tractor, and we'll just keep feeding it over as it passes over. Stop. Once we make it to this point, we've got the two ends of the chain that we can bring together, and we found today that with our particular tire, we need to go for a pretty snug fit. So I'm going to go for that end link right there. Now, if these were staying on, I'd maybe consider getting a bolt cutter or something and just cutting the excess off. But I'm going to do that on both sides because that's what works best for our tire today. And we can go back through and add our rubber tensioner. The rubber tensioner is sold separately, not included with the kit, but we strongly recommend using this because just right away, look at all the excess slack that's going to be pulled out of those chains. That's going to mean a better fit on our tire and a safer ride for our tractor. So just go in a star-shaped pattern evenly throughout the tire so that we're getting pretty equal pressure, like right here. That's not great. I'm going to change this over to here. And a good way to gauge that is actually to look at this center ring. And if it's centered up with your wheel, then you probably did a pretty good job centering both the chain on the tire as well as evenly distributing the tensioner around the tire chain. And that'll do it for our look at the line of Titan Chain Square Link tractor tire chains. Thanks for watching.